Okay, welcome everybody. My deepest apologies for the issue with the logging on. I'm glad that you were able to either get the email I sent or get in through the calendar invite to join us today. I'm Melissa Stewart, Assistant to the Executive Director, and I am here with Jessica Rohr, our Member Engagement and Communications Specialist, and we are going to talk to you about HathiTrust and how we're more than just a digital library. Before we get started, I'm going to go through a little bit of housekeeping like we do with most of our webinars. We have a lot of people online today, so we're asking that everybody who is not speaking, please keep your microphones and your cameras turned off. And then we have Heather Welton, our colleague, is going to monitor the chat for us. And at the end, we will take questions through the chat. We'll read them out loud, and that way they get captured on the recording and answer your questions during the webinar. Also, we will share the slides afterward, as well as a link to the recording. We're going to post it to our YouTube channel. Also, if anybody needs transcription service, we do have the CC button on the bottom is activated. They are automated transcriptions. It's not a live transcription service. So you're going to see HathiTrust misspelled in many funny ways. Just warning you of that. All right. And now to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday to you. As you can see, we are going to cover many aspects of HathiTrust today. So this is the last installment of our HathiTrust March Madness 101 webinar series. We will be able to point you to those after the fact, but we've done them now for a couple rounds. So there are about 8 or 9 in total, but this is the final one for this month. So today we are welcoming new members, current members, to really dig deep into many aspects of HathiTrust. So everything from governance to collections to making the most of HathiTrust in your own library. We have left time at the end for questions. If you have them, as Melissa said, you can drop them in the chat at any time, though we may not get to them until the actual end. As I mentioned, we have many of our new members on the call today. This is just the group that's joined since the beginning of this year. Last year, in 2020, we had about more than 30 new members join the organization, and we are on track to actually be in that same rough number here in 2021. So we've welcomed new members from Canada, from England, and then all across the United States. So welcome. HathiTrust, here we are. But where did we come from? How did we start? I had a great little fun slide when we celebrated our 10th anniversary a couple years ago with a party hat, but I've sadly retired that. We have replaced our accessories at this time. But HathiTrust started even before 2008. So when mass digitization really got started in the early aughts, so 2004, 2005, Google was working with Stanford, with Harvard, New York Public Library, the University of Michigan, a few libraries to digitize their collections. But at some point, this group had an aha moment and realized that this was not going to be Google's library. This is the purview of academic and research libraries for academic and research libraries. So they came together with an intent to really share an investment, not just in the immediate preservation of items, but for future access, for future services, for future users. So that was 2008. That the Committee on Institutional Cooperation and Libraries, the University of California, got together and formed HathiTrust officially. We have had from the beginning the same mission. We are here to organize, collect, share, record the scholarly record. But something that is new for us in the past couple years is really thinking about, okay, so why do we have this collection in the first place? What are we going to do with it? What are our members going to do with it? What will the general public do with it? And that's really where we start thinking about ourselves as a catalyst for research, for learning in all the different formats. So we've really come to value this vision over the past years. We're really seeing how HathiTrust and our members can really serve each other during difficult times. I want to talk a bit about who we are as an organization. So we are 12 strong. This is the core staff of HathiTrust. We are really involved in the day-to-day operations of the organization, from collections and copyright to ingest of content, outreach. We've got a number of individuals focused 100% on HathiTrust. What you don't see here are the group of developers, system administrators who we work with at our host institution, the University of Michigan. So their pictures are not here, but they are very much part of our day-to-day operations. Even more so, we are extended beyond just HathiTrust, beyond just our host institution, but we work with other entities too to maintain HathiTrust's infrastructure and really manage the digital content that we steward. So our research center, which is our text and data mining component, is sort of duly hosted at Indiana and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We also work with the California Digital Library on our metadata. So we are in total about 60 some people, either full-time or part-time, really making sure that HathiTrust is operating on a day-to-day basis. So Berkeley to Baltimore, count about 60 of us. That said, we would not be here doing this work if it weren't for the members. From the very beginning, we were founded by a group of libraries who could see a vision where in coming together, they were going to be stronger than any one library on their own. So from the beginning, we have been member-led. We continue to be member-governed, and we are 100% funded by our members. So this really is kind of the core, a core value of HathiTrust that continues to this day. We have the collective collection, which we'll talk a bit more about, but certainly the members are kind of the engine to the organization. If you take a peek at who we actually are by the numbers, we are now more than 170 institutions. We are serving well more than 200 campuses, multiple state systems here in the United States, and have welcomed members from around the world. Really, in the 3 years that I've been here, we've really seen more members join from the South Pacific, and most recently, University of Cambridge was one of our newer international members. I dropped this here in print holdings early on because everything that we're going to be talking about from here on out really is based on services that are developed because we have this collective collection. And one of the ways that we're able to manage this and offer services is because all of you here on the call contributed your print holdings, submitted them to us as part of your onboarding process. So that may have been 10 years ago, may have been 11 years ago, may have been 2 months ago, but you can, I think, understand that we have these records and we're able to then provide some different data back to you, either as a service or just as data points. But this is really the core basis for many of the services and benefits that I'm going to be talking about. I am going to, now that you know some of the ins and outs of HathiTrust, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to talk more about how we keep all of the boats flowing through the canals, so to speak. We're not that big yet.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I'm going to talk a little bit about governance. Once again, we are a membership organization, and it's really great that we really depend on participation from all of our members. And that starts right at the top with our governance. So if you want to go to the next slide, there we go. So we have a board of governors that is made up of member representatives from our member institutions. 6 of the members of our board are from our founding institutions. That's the University of California has 2, the Big Ten Academic Alliance has 2, then our host institution, University of Michigan and Indiana University, each have 1 member to the board. That's half of our board, and the other 6 members of the board are elected from the membership. And we are going to actually be opening up nominations for board members in July. So if you're a member representative and you might be interested in running for board, those nominations open up in July, and we'll have elections in September. The executive director, Mike Furlow, reports to the board. And then all of us HathiTrust staff and operations report to Mike. We also have a program steering committee, and they do a lot to drive our services and things that we're thinking about. The board appoints the program steering committee. We actually right now have a calls open for nominations for program steering committee. That's going to be open until next Tuesday. So if you are at an AUL level at your institution and you're interested in serving on the program steering committee, please email me. And the program steering committee also, they appoint task forces, committees, and working groups that work on different initiatives. So next slide. So once again, because we're a membership organization and not a subscription service, we do expect things of members and responsibilities of members. So we expect our members to approve the criteria for membership eligibility. Again, elect 6 members of the Board of Governors. We hold a vote every year for our budget that happens in the fall. Our budget is approved by 2/3 majority vote of the membership. Anytime we need to make a change to our bylaws, that again, we will put that out to a vote of the membership. And then again, we count on the membership to advise the Board of Governors on what things that you all care about us addressing. And then again, we have working groups. So we have our user support team, Federal Documents Advisory Committee, Shared Print Advisory Committee, all are under the purview of the Executive Director. Another plug, we have an open nominations right now for Shared Print Advisory Committee. Once again, if you are interested in serving on the Shared Print Advisory Committee, please email me, and we would love to get more nominations. And then the Program Steering Committee, we have right now 4 working groups and task forces that report to the Program Steering Committee, and you'll be hearing more from the work of some of these groups later on this year. All right, now I am going to quickly just talk about how our cost model works. Just a quick overview for you all. So one neat thing about our cost model is that we divide costs among the membership. So all members are assigned a tier based on their total library expenditures as reported in public sources like iPads in the US. And then all members of that same tier pay the same amount to maintain the public domain volumes in the collection. And then the second portion of the fee is based on the overlap of the copyrighted items with your collections and that of HathiTrust. And again, the more members who also own that item, the less that everybody else has to pay. They all share the cost. And so the really great thing about everyone sharing the costs of maintaining HathiTrust is that the bigger the membership grows, it drives down the fees for all other members. And so over the past few years, we've been able to increase our budget so that we can provide more services to members, while at the same time not having to increase fees. In fact, decrease fees for most members for the past 3 years. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica now to talk about our programs and services.
Thanks, Melissa. So as you've heard, we have been able to build upon this collective collection and really think about and work with our members to understand what their needs are and what HathiTrust can do to most support our academic libraries. So while you may know us primarily for the digital library, the 17.4 million items there, that collection really enables us to do more. So we help focus everything from collections management to text and data mining. We continue to be a source for preservation, but we focus also on access. We want to make sure that what we do hold collectively is accessible to as many individuals as possible within the purviews of the law. So we've been able to really take advantage of what we've built together over the past 15 years. So some of the specific benefits that members have, as mentioned, the preservation really when we were founded was a big draw for members. It continues to be something that we've got more than 60 members who regularly contribute digitized content. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but it is limitless. So it is something that as a member, you have the option to do. It's not required, but you may contribute as much as often as you would like to. The temporary access service is something that is available because of the collection itself. So that is another benefit. Members are able to download complete works that are in the public domain or available through Creative Commons licensing. If you're not a member, you've got to stumble through kind of page by page for a download. But if you are a member patron, you're able to do that at once. So it makes a difference. The accessible text request service is a service available to your patrons who have a print disability. That's something that you would request if your library does not already have that, but that is another benefit of membership for HathiTrust. The shared print program is something that has grown quite a bit over the past 3-4 years. We just did a webinar on that particular service. So if you want more details about that, make sure to watch that. Same thing with the accessible text request service. We were able to dedicate another session to that. So I won't go into too much detail. The last real benefit that we have for members is the ability to do some special work in the text and data mining area through our HathiTrust Research Center. So there's a lot of free tools that anybody can use, but for those researchers who have really advanced computational needs, they do have access to a dedicated computing environment at the HathiTrust Research Center. So all of these services are available because of the collection. But what is the collection? Having this 17.4 million items available to us doesn't mean anything unless we know what's actually in it. So we continue to do some research into our own collection so that we can share more with you, but I can tell you a bit about it. One thing to keep in mind is that, like all libraries, there's a whole lot of human labor that goes behind it. So from the very beginning of mass digitization until this day, there are people scanning, continuing to scan. So we just want to tip our hat to those individuals who are actually doing that work, and certainly to those institutions that have contributed items to build the collection into what it is today. The collection itself is 17.4 million items strong. That amounts to breakdown in titles and serials. About 40% of the collection is available in the public domain in the United States. For those of you outside the US, it is about 4.4 million items. And keep in mind that everything that is in the collection was primarily member contributed. So there's not a lot of overlap with other contributors. It's just by academic libraries for academic libraries. The majority of our collection, about 95%, did come out of Google digitization projects. So whereas there was a big push, as mentioned in the early aughts, Google continues to work with different partners, and we continue to receive that content. It's true also for Internet Archive, and then local digitization projects do make up a portion of the collection. HathiTrust contributors. So there are more than 60 contributors, the majority of which you see in the blue and the red came from some of the original partners. So we have a large number of items contributed by the University of Michigan, by Harvard University, by those initial partners who were working with Google. But over the years, increasingly, more and more libraries have either launched their own digitization efforts, started working with Google, and we now have a fair number of regular contributors to continue to grow the collection. Oops, lost my screen there. So the collection itself looks a lot like your collection. If you are based here in North America, which most of you are, it is no surprise to you that the majority of our collection then is English, is primarily focused on the humanities. We do have a fair number of titles in other languages, 455 languages to be exact. But this is very much reflective of a typical academic and research library here in North America. When you dig down into the collections, as I said, the kind of profile of it skews towards the humanities and social sciences. We do have a strong collection of music. Philosophy is another area. We are regularly undergoing investigations in the collection so that we do understand more of what's there. Another way to enter the collection, think about it, is to, in the actual library interface itself, you can explore pre-made collections. We have some featured collections from the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, Negro Presses, Making of America series from Cornell. So there are a lot of different ways to enter the collection and learn more about what we have. So having this collection means nothing unless we can talk about access. So the most important thing that you could take away from today, if you want to pass on anything, is that in order to obtain the most benefit from HathiTrust, your patrons should log in. They can do this on pretty much any screen from the catalog. The button is there anytime they need it. And this is what permits them access to both the temporary titles for the emergency temporary access service and also for downloading items that are in the public domain. So make sure you pass that on. Some details of member versus non-member access. So as mentioned, the temporary access service does allow members who are using that service to access copyrighted items when their library is closed. So that is the basis of that service. Under normal circumstances, or when that is not something that your library is using, members are able to do the same thing that non-members are able to do. So because of copyright restrictions, we permit only search access to copyrighted items. So you can search the full text of a copyrighted item, but you can't view it, you can't download it. And that's just because of copyright law. So even if you contribute a copyrighted title, that is not something that you're able to download or read online in the browser. What members do have access to in copyrighted material, as mentioned, the temporary access service, but also the accessible text request service for users with print disability. So there are a couple benefits then for access on both the copyrighted area and also those items in the public domain, which members can download in full. So when you get down to it, there's a lot to take in. There are a lot of tricks and tips and ways that you can maximize HathiTrust at your own institution. So these are just a couple of things that I want to talk about where you can make the most of your HathiTrust membership. So contributing content is not required, but as you can see, there are a number of institutions that do that. We've got a lot of people contributing localized content, certainly more who are working with Google and continue to contribute in that way. But why make these deposits? So preservation remains at the core of our work. Preservation and access is what drives who we are. So those are two primary reasons. Now, what that enables is certainly preservation of items in the scholarly record in your collection. But then once we get into the access area, that's really where you start to build on the relationship and the collective collection so that what you're contributing is something that other libraries are able to share in the benefits. So that's where we get into the emergency temporary access service and the contributors that afforded that over the past year, accessible text request service. So depositing content is a way to continue to grow the collection and therefore grow services that are available to all of the members and beyond. There are a number of different ways that you can dig in even deeper. So we've got a number of APIs and access to data fields that can help you either in research or investigating certain details of the collection, but we have data sets that are available. So a lot of ways to slice and dice kind of the nitty gritty of the collection. So there's a link here that you'll get, obviously, when we send out the slides, where you can read a little bit more about those kind of do-it-yourself data access. We also have available for members, and again, based on those print holdings that I mentioned early on, we're able to do some comparison work. So this is some data that can help you either look at usage or can help you investigate your collection to make weeding decisions. We're able to provide some reports regularly, overlap reports of the collection, and some reports that are available by request. So we do like to provide as much data as we can to members. We recognize that we do have some limitations in that area, and we are continually investigating how we can provide more back to you. One way that you can really maximize your use of HathiTrust is to integrate records into your own local catalogs and discovery systems. We have the ability to do that not only for the emergency temporary access titles, which many of you have done, but also for regular full view items. So we have instructions on how you can do that. Another way is actually working with your existing discovery vendors. So we've been able to work on some of our relationships there and really update those workflows so that they're refreshed content through Ex Libris and EBSCO products. So there are ways that you can continually have content from HathiTrust more easily accessible to your users where they expect to find it. One of the best things that you can do for your patrons and to really maximize your membership is to let folks know that HathiTrust is a resource for them. So to help you support your promotion of HathiTrust, we have a number of different toolkits. We've got some pre-made materials. We have some videos. We've got all these 101s, which are really good for your library staff. We do have some additional details, additional materials for the emergency temporary access service. And we continue to add to these resources as we can. So we do like to help you out. And certainly if you are looking for something and you're not finding it, we'd love to hear that too. We have a lot of interest in using HathiTrust in the classroom, and we are always interested in hearing about that. So if you have examples of how your faculty are using HathiTrust in the classroom, we would like to hear about it. There are some particular features of the collection itself that are really useful in the classroom. We have the ability to download citations in APA or MLA format. You can create collections. Angelina Zaitsev did a webinar last week on search, advanced search, and collection builder. So that would be another one to check out if you're interested in some of the more advanced catalog and collection building detail. Something that is of note is that HathiTrust items, again, were collected by and managed by academic and research libraries. So whereas you might have content that is in Google Books or other digital archives online, they may not be as accessible or as primed for scholarly research as those items in HathiTrust. So that is just something to keep in mind as you're using resources or looking around for them, is that HathiTrust can be a good resource because it is curated and stewarded by the academic libraries. None of this will help if you need help and you can't get it. So this is how you can get help. This is for you. This is for your patrons. If you need help with a digital library, you can either hit the feedback button on the website, or you can send an email to this email address, feedback@hathitrust.org. That is staffed by member volunteers. So folks within our membership organization who commit their time and expertise to answer patron inquiries. And then the HathiTrust Research Center has its own dedicated line for those who need help there, htrc-help@hathitrust.org. Melissa mentioned a couple ways to get involved. Certainly right now we are recruiting for governance and working groups. And as mentioned, you can contact Melissa, or you can send an inquiry to the feedback@issues.hathitrust.org. But there are a lot of ways to be involved. We have a private Slack community for members. We distribute a newsletter. We post on social media. So there's a lot of ways to learn more about HathiTrust and also to contribute ideas or stories of success in your own library. We love to hear about it. So this harkens back to days of yore, and certainly a place that many of us hope to be in the near future. Again, this is a community. So we've been talking a lot about how HathiTrust is a member organization. And for as much as we are taking advantage of the collective collection and building services for our libraries, it really is at its core a community that firmly believes that we can do more together than any single library can do on its own. So we're very happy to have all of you here today, and we hope to see you in person like this in the future. And now we are ready for any questions.
I know we do have a couple so far, but feel free to put any more in the chat as we go. I know we just threw a lot of information at you in a short amount of time. First question, will we ever be able to have full text for resources for which we are the initiating library? I think I'm really thinking about books at this time. Serials would be too hard. Do you want to take a stab at that, Jessica?
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. Is that about contributing library? Like if somebody contributes content?
Yeah, I'm wondering if that is, if they will be able to access the items that they, at least the items that they contributed.
So as far as I know, we don't have plans to do that. And that is primarily because of copyright law in the United States and around the world. So it is certainly, that would be a dream of many of us who are committed to providing access, but we would probably get shut down at this point if we did that. So it's a good dream. Keep asking the question. Maybe someday it will change.
Is it a Google problem? The Google problem for us is the full PDF download, which all of you as members have full PDF download of all items in all public domain items, full view items in HathiTrust, whereas non-members can only download one page at a time of Google scanned materials. That is the issue with Google more. The issue with being able to access those resources is a copyright law problem. Okay, we used to submit have our members submit print holdings annually up to 2019. Is the new TBD likely to be more frequently or less? And is this because of the pandemic?
So we are right now accepting submissions of print holdings on a monthly basis. So if you are interested in submitting, you can do so. We've got, I think by the 25th of the month, if you submit by that date, then you would see refreshed print holdings the following month. We don't yet know exactly what the requirement will be going forward for regular submissions in the future, but that is still something that we are working on.
So the annual resubmits from existing libraries. Yeah, I think you're talking about that we used to, the print holding submissions. Yeah, we've actually had a lot of institutions want to submit them more frequently because of the pandemic.
Yes, that is true. But it's not required to submit annually right now, but
Right.
you are welcome to submit.
Right. Oh, why the change?
There was a great demand due to the pandemic. So we always knew that we were going to kind of revise our process and our policies around print holdings, that requirement for members. But when the pandemic happened and we started the emergency temporary access service, people were eager to regularly refresh their print holdings so that those titles would be reflected in their temporary access availability.
Yeah, a lot of our members were having trouble. It was too onerous on them to try to submit every year. But then because of the pandemic, now we found that a lot of members actually want to submit more than once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. Oh, how do we differentiate between music and music score?
Oh, that is a question I'm not sure that I can answer. What I can say is that I know we got an exact question like that in Angelina Zaitsev's search webinar last week about identifying musical scores in the collection. What I can say is that we don't ourselves manage the metadata. So however it was cataloged at the originating institution is how it would be discoverable and cataloged within HathiTrust. So it may be a little bit of potato depending on local cataloging practices.
Did you mention the number of public domain texts in the collection? I just looked it up and we have 6,859,089 public domain volumes in the collection right now of that 17 million total volume. So it's about 39% of the collection is in the public domain.
And that's specifically in the United States. And then of that, right, there's about 4.5 million or so that is available globally.
For the data shared with Discovery Services, can you clarify that it is the metadata only shared and not the full text, or is full text indexing shared for out of copyright material?
I wonder, I don't think I know the exact answer to that question.
Yeah, that is a question for Graham.
Yeah.
Jessica, this is
Yeah.
Heather.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I'm
Maybe.
understanding. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Walton. If I'm understanding the question correctly, and you're talking about the data that HathiTrust shares through the Hathi files with discovery systems that you can then make available via your own local discovery, we do just share what's in the Hathi files, which is just a subset of the metadata we get from all of you. It's not actually the full text. The full text brings you back into the HathiTrust system, depending on your level of membership from there. So if I misunderstood the question, please just let me know. But basically the discovery layer takes you back into the HathiTrust interface, which then depends on how you log in or authenticate.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you,
Sure,
Heather.
no problem. I get this all the time with each.
All right, great. This is just a comment about the public domain, the rolling wall for public domain. It was stuck at 1923 for too long. We agree. Do you
Yeah,
also want to say about that, Jessica?
just that thankfully now it keeps on rolling. So every year we have a project to make sure that we gather up everything, both from US copyright, but then also for our UK, Australia, Canada, to make sure that we are opening as much as we can in the collection. And we do that every January. It takes a little bit of time for all of the titles to catch up, but absolutely, we're excited to be able to do that.
All right, any more questions?
And we'll make sure when we send out the link to this webinar and slides that we include a link to our HathiTrust 101 series on our YouTube channel. So anything that you heard about today, some things you might find in that 101 series if you missed them before, or you're just interested in going a little bit deeper. So, and we're always entertaining your questions in other ways too.
All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, I am going to stop the recording, but Jessica and I will stay online in case anybody has any more questions. Please feel free to ask those at any time, but otherwise, thank you for joining us. And again,
Thank you.
sharing the slides and the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel.
Thank you all.